All right. So Kim joined NFLT in 2021 and serves as our conservation transactions manager on our acquisitions team. She began her journey in real estate in 2001 in residential real estate appraisal. Her experience in that field led to a 15-year career with the St. John's River Water Management District. And during her time there, she participated in or facilitated the acquisition of nearly 132,000 acres at a cost of just over $464.5 million. Pretty impressive. While at the district, Kim managed a close partnership with North Florida Land Trust, building valuable, lasting relationships. This led to several acquisitions in the Camp Blanding buffer area and partnership in the O2O. During her time there, she earned her bachelor's degree in legal services, bolstering her negotiating, research, and contracting skills. And while she was on a 3-year hiatus from conservation acquisitions, Kim further sharpened her skills in product development, product launch, and vendor management with FPL Energy Services. She managed and launched statewide projects there. So, since, like I said, 2021, Kim has been with us at North Florida Land Trust and obviously knows our mission very well and is an absolute asset to our team. So, thank you, Kim, for sharing with us today. Thank you for being here, everybody. And now, if I can get my tools to work with me, I will turn it over to you, Kim, and let you tell us all about a day in the life.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Abby. Thank you for having me. Thanks for that great introduction. Um, so uh, today's today's question is conservation, job or lifestyle. And again, like Abby said, I've got about 20 years in the conservation realm. 15 of those were with the district. I was really, cutting my teeth and learning how to play this acquisition and conservation game. Currently with North Florida Land Trust, I'm a conservation manager. And one thing that in reflecting back on, a day in the life or, conservation, job or lifestyle that I kept hearing throughout my career development was if you find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. And I kind of reject that idea a little bit because I spoke with a colleague of mine and, a fellow conservation person and the one thing that came to mind was that the more passionate I am, the harder I work. My projects keep me up at night. I'll wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning trying to solve a problem in my head over whatever the issue is. But my hard work is driven by my passion. So I've never felt like I had it easy. And that's by no means a complaint. It's just the more passionate I am, the harder I'm working. Um, Looking back, I feel like I was destined for conservation, whether it's fate, God, Mother Earth, higher power, whatever you call it. I always felt like I was fated for conservation. It was my calling. A little more background beyond my bio. I started my career entirely backwards. And as I take you through this, understand this is how my passion developed, right? So starting my career was entirely backward. I'm proud and passionate about everything I did to myself, bringing myself all the way forward, including my history. But I graduated high school as a teen mother. I didn't know college was something I could do. Statistically speaking, as a teen mom, I shouldn't have landed where I'm at, but many of us figured out how to beat the odds. And it starts with passion, but a passion in what? Well, for me, that developed over time. A passion to be a mother turned into a passion to succeed, turned into a passion to change my fate, a passion to survive, evolving into a passion to thrive, and eventually a passion to save the places that I loved as a child and continue to love today. And to be clear, this was never a pity party. I wasn't some poor, destitute child. My parents were normal and caring. I was simply surviving my own poor choices. And like many in my status at the time, I played my 20s in survival mode and I was just surviving myself. But building on that passion of things that I had experienced as a child and growing up and moving forward. Job or lifestyle? So that's such a complex question for me. And for me, it's both. And sometimes, often, those lines really get blurred for me. Every day I think about my job, which is a large part of my lifestyle, and vice versa. Despite whatever workload I have, or task at hand, or weekend of getaway, um, neither is far from my mind, whether I'm sitting at my desk, crunching numbers and doing paperwork. I'm thinking about the outdoors, or the next place I want to visit, or the place I want to save. If I'm outdoors and I'm having a nature weekend, I'm thinking about, geez, this would make a great conservation easement. I wonder who owns it. So all of these lines are completely blurred, and so it's this passion that drives both sides of me. Um, these are personal pictures taken on personal time. I had to look up what this flower was because I'm not a biologist. I, I can kill anything, but I can save everything. So, it is what it is. But I really enjoy the nature that is out there for us to enjoy. The other two pictures are from Sykes Farm. Their fall festivals when they do the crop maize. But these images give me a respite from, any kind of, paper chaos. Um, so when I'm outside and I'm looking for and finding inspiration in everything, why did I get up this morning? Why is this project important? How is one project worth up to 200 hours of my time and reams of paperwork? And I mean virtual reams. I don't print as much paper as I used to. Um, but it matters to me. It matters to me what my children and my grandchildren think of what I made of my life. It matters to me what my leadership and our board and our members think of my performance. It matters enough for me to push back on something that I don't understand or agree with. Doesn't mean I'll win, but I'm not afraid to push back because that passion is there. It matters to the landowners who can't afford their property taxes, or are trying to settle their estates or plan for their estate. It matters to the bees, the creeks, the flora, the fauna. It matters to my dinner table, not just my paycheck, but the quality of food and that I'm putting on my dinner table. It matters to my ability to recreate in a clean environment. So job, is conservation a job or a lifestyle? For me, it is inescapably both. Um, my projects are my children, and by that description, you could imagine parenting isn't easy. I worry about them. They keep me up at night. I have to keep them safe and on track, and sometimes they give me trouble, and I have to go and rescue them. Um, ooh. Um, And we all know that parenting is not easy. So on to the JOB side of the conservation coin. So coming back to some of these pictures that you saw earlier, now I'm going to get into some of these. Now these were work pictures taken on work days, and you can see some of these involve a little more risk than the pretty mushrooms and flowers. Going clockwise, looking at the cow picture in the middle, leading a site tour through multiple cow pastures while not losing a cow or having one. The picture on the right, two people appearing to break into a property. Notice I didn't do a selfie, right? This was the third attempt to access a property with the property owner's permission, but the property manager failed to go out to this property and unlock the gate for us. Now, I have a contractor, that's the gentleman in the background in the brown shirt, who we're all traveling an hour to get back and forth to this property for this contractor to do his job, which is a part of the due diligence. I'm about to lose this contractor to another project if I can't get him in there. So I asked the property owner, can I just cut through the, like, yeah. So we got into the property that day. We made that acquisition. It was all well and good. And mind you, not all of these pictures are from my time with North Florida Land Trust. This is probably over the course of 10 years or so of pictures, but these are some of the highlights that just really make me laugh. Um, the middle picture, what looks like a bridge, it's actually a bridge. It's a custom built bridge, a creek crossing on a property that was eventually bought. But that bridge is made of scrap, two two scrap mobile home frames with random scrap metal just laying on top of them. And I have to drive over this on an appraisal tour and convince everybody that it's safe. I was not convinced. I got out and walked and I let somebody else drive over it. I was not going over that thing in a car because there's about an 8-foot drop. Bottom left, that's a venomous snake. Gators and snakes and bears, oh my. We often run into these things. It's a constant, not fear, but it's an awareness. So I would say I don't fear these things, but I'm prepared and I'm aware of them. One time I body checked an appraiser that almost stepped on a pygmy rattlesnake, and he was a little miffed at first because I invaded his space by shoving him. But he later understood as he's walking around in his penny loafers that that wasn't the place to step. And then the last picture is me smiling, yes, smiling in chest waders. This is in an area of the river in St. Johns County where a bunch of scientists and botanists wanted to take a 1/4 mile hike through the swamp to an isolated upland. And I decided to borrow chest waders because I didn't want to get, terribly dirty. And I'm a little klutzy in the woods. I tend to fall down. And when you're going through a swamp of that nature, our kind of muck is it'll suck your shoes off. So I went in prepared, and that was a great opportunity. But we beached a boat on a shoreline in the St. Johns River and walked a 1/4 mile through the swamp. But again, these are the kinds of things that you're passionate about. You learn how to do. I've always been around animals, so none of these things really scared me. I spent a lot of time in the Everglades, and so none of what I've done here, besides the B&E, was a little scary. But it wasn't a B&E because I had the owner's permission. A little about the our North Florida Land Trust process. I'm not going to go into great depth. This could actually take up an entire session on its own. But basically, North Florida Land Trust has a process that we put a property owner through. So whether it's an unsolicited offer, whether somebody referred a property owner to us, or the property owner just happened to find us, this is the process we go through. Project identification, internal desk crew, leadership decision. It meets the criteria. Are we going to say no, or are we going to refer it to a partner? We try not to leave anybody out in the lurch by just going, no, sorry, not going to go there. We try to find a home for a project, even if it's destined for homelessness. And that's not always a permanent thing because new funding sources are constantly coming up. Then we get down to the initial site visit, the project selection criteria, and our first point of board approval or lands committee approval. And if it goes from there and it gets through the next few steps, then we go on to contract approval. Then once we get under a contract, we start our due diligence to make sure there's no super funds. If all of the due diligence, survey, ESA, environmental site assessment, phase 1, making sure there's no ugly stuff out there, no 55-gallon drums of green ooze. Then we move to a closing authorization. So our board and our lands committee touch these projects at least 3 times, if not more. And then we, get to the end result. Now, if you can imagine that this is our process, each partner that we have has a similar process. So for every time we have a project and we bring in funding partners, and let's say there's one we're going to talk about in a little bit, not specifically, but there's one where we have 3 partners. So we are managing or facilitating this process for however many partners that we have. And that can get a little tedious. And so, I'm getting worn out. I need another break. I need to go. I need to go out and look at another property. So back to this slide. This is nice. This is relaxing. What are the reasons that we're out in the field? Well, there's about 5 points of contact where we could need to go out into the field. I try to keep mine to 2 or 3 because I have as much as I want to go tiptoeing through the swamps and having fun and doing all this outdoor stuff. If I'm not doing some of this paperwork, I'm not getting to the next project. So there's our initial site visit. We take our land management out. There's an appraisal tour. I have to go on those because this is an opportunity with the owner of the land to really shine this thing up in the best light and marketability. So while we're looking at, an interesting appraisal problem, and I come from an appraisal background, is that we're looking at it from a conservation lens. I have to help the appraisers look at it from what's the most we can do for this? How many houses can we cram into this site? Because that's what the market value is. So if you ever hear any of us talking about the maximum capability of a property to be developed, it's not because we're trying to figure out how to develop it. We're trying to figure out how to get the owner a fair market value price. What is the feasibility that could actually happen? Because this owner is going to want to get paid a fair market value for their property. Survey is another reason we go out there, environmental site assessments, baseline document reports, and pre-closing inspections. Pre-closing inspections, for instance, we just had a couple of hurricanes. Let's say one of our properties had some improvements, a barn. Is the barn still standing? Is that a problem if the barn got knocked over in a hurricane right before closing? Well, it could be. That could have been an important monetary thing that we need to have somebody's insurance cover before we go to closing. So all of these reasons are the reasons we go out into the field. I try to make sure that I'm not just recreating during working hours. I'm trying to be very picky and choosy about how I go. If I'm in the woods, I'm not at my computer compiling the copious amounts of forms and memos and emails. The administrative side of these projects is daunting, but worth it. So while I love the lifestyle part of my job, the job part requires me to really strike a balance between the outside part of the project and the paperwork part of the project. So back to the office. So again, we're gonna review real quick a Clay County property. We'll call this just the test property. I'm not going to name it, but this area, negotiate, secure partnership, and grants is where we've stopped. We've been involved with this property just a little over a year now. We've gone through all these things, and we have 3 or 4 funding sources secured for this property. The more funding sources you have secured, the more paperwork you have secured. So there's applications to that funding source. There is a regular cadence of reporting to that funding source, and we're still only talking about one funding source. And then there's a reconciliation. Let's say we get all the way to the closing. We have to reconcile all of our pennies and nickels and dimes and satisfying our beat counters that every dollar, every hour that we've spent is accounted for. And again, just to remind you, for every funding source that we have, it doubles and triples that paperwork requirement. So every one of them is that much paperwork. So that's where you have to ask ourselves, is 200 hours of our time worth it? In this particular project's case, it is 100% worth it. This is a huge piece of land that is right in the path of development, and we've got 3 funding sources that we're working with, and this is a very important project for so many reasons. I need a break from all this paperwork. I need to look at my flowers and just enjoy this morning glory with a bee. So job or lifestyle, for me, it's both. It is unequivocally, inescapably both. I think I shared with you that this picture of the morning glory. This is a picture of a morning glory over in Willaca, down here near where I live. And I happen to be checking on a piece of property, not a conservation property, it's just a residential property, but this is where I live. And I saw this bee in the morning glories, and it just struck me as something beautiful. And I took a break from what I'm doing. And by the way, when I'm on appraisal outings, phase 1 environmental site assessment outings, everybody's paying attention to all the really cool conservation stuff, the bigger picture stuff. And I've got my butt in the air and my head, in the flowers, trying to get a picture of these bees and these things. I kind of just check out for a moment with my ADHD, and I'm like, ooh, that's a really pretty picture of a maiden cane, or I don't know what that is, what Sykes Farms use to make their maize. It's not corn anymore because that used to scare the kids. It was too creepy, but but they shortened their crop, and they've made it really fun. It was fun. And then this field full of sunflowers is just, love it. So I've had my rejuvenation, so here we go. Back to work. Another part of what I do is teaching and presenting, much like what I'm doing today. One of my favorite non-transactional opportunities is sharing my passion, my knowledge, and skill with the public, the landowners, partners, or members of our conservation community, like today. As an example, I think it's tomorrow night or the next couple of days, I'm giving a talk on what is a conservation easement. So I'll give a super short, brief version of it. But if you can imagine that green patch of land is 1,000 acres, and a conservation easement is only buying a portion of an owner's bundle of rights. When you own a piece of property, you own a full bundle of rights. And when we buy a conservation easement, we are buying certain sticks out of those bundles of rights, and we're leaving the owner with others. So mining, housing development, community, commercial development, industrial development, harvesting and wetlands. Those are among some of the items that we may choose to buy out of that bundle of rights. And we may leave that owner of 1,000 acres with a small residential development, minimal subdivision. So on 1,000 acres, say he only has 2 children and he wants the right to build 2 houses and he wants the right to subdivide it once. So you can see, the 2 houses there. He wants to keep cows. He wants to be able to do a cattle pond, and he wants to keep his silviculture. So you take that 1,000 acres basically out of play from a huge development that a Lennar or somebody, not vilifying anybody, but everybody has the right to do what they want to with their property. And we're buying those rights so that 1,000 acres doesn't turn into an 800 unit development. It's a willing seller program. And this is part of the education component that helps these owners understand what their options are. So job or lifestyle, again, for me, it's both. I love sharing what I do. I'm passionate about what we do. I love the site visits and the work-life outings. I love engaging with the community and helping untangle. In this particular conversation, conservation easements, the most misunderstood tool in our bag. After 20 years, I still find people that have no idea what it is, and they think it might be, you know, um, putting too much land into conservation. The administrative requirements are necessary for every single transaction. The necessary site visit, outreach engagements, it's all necessary. And I'm sure if any of you were at this last Saturday's North Florida Land Trust 25th anniversary, and I was out there on the side of County Road 214 waving a construction orange flag like a mad woman, this driveway, I assure you that is all passion to share the lifestyle. And I just had a blast sitting there with a flag waving around like a mad woman on the side of the road. So job or lifestyle, for me, it's completely both. This set of pictures, just kind of going back to, these are all personal pictures, 100% personal pictures. My daughter is in this group of kids on the horses. My daughter, who is 32 now, she was probably 10 or 12 in that picture. She and her girlfriends would get up, they get on their pack of horses, and they go around and play in the lakes. And so I got to raise my daughter outdoors. I'm lucky enough, I live in a rural area. I spent a lot of my childhood in the Everglades and out in Key Biscayne Bay, and paddle boarding. The top left picture is a picture of me kayaking on Little Lake George. The bottom left is me over at Mud Springs in Willaca. And then the other 2 pictures, the actual pretty pictures, shocked myself. I actually took these, is of a wood duck, a turtle, and all of those 2 bottom pictures are in the Ocklawaha. So I enjoy the outdoors just as much on a personal level as I do a professional level. And I just want to thank all of you for allowing me to share my passions. Now back to work. Any questions?
Kim, thank you so much for sharing. I always love hearing um, from you about what you do, but more so about your passion. It is evident in literally everything you do. And I think it's so special that you got to share that with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, Brenda was going to help me with questions. I don't see any in the chat yet. So if you have any questions, type them in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature and I can unmute you.
Brenda, you're muted.
There we go.
Hello. So I have a question for Kim. How many projects do you work on at any given time?
Gosh, that number can be pretty flexible. And understanding that diagram of stages. So I could have anywhere of 20 plus projects anywhere in that diagram. Now, as far as active projects, and by well, what I mean by active, that are being negotiated or under contract or in some version of due diligence, that's probably more like a 6 to 10 area. Six being still on the heavy side, because you can imagine trying to do 6 to 10 closings all at once. But in that serpentine, path flow, it could be up to 20, because we get, a pretty hefty influx of people bringing in projects, and so we're, shuffling them along. And but yeah, I'd say, 10 to 20, and right now I think I've got 6 that are heavily on the hook.
Very interesting. Might I ask another question, Kim?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
How would I go about putting a conservation easement on my property?
So I have a standard informational email, and I would want you to, let's assume we've already had a conversation and that you're in agreement that you like the conservation easement idea. There's several avenues. We would match you to the most suitable funding source, and we would potentially make application to that funding source and facilitate your way through that, marshal you through that process. So whether it's a state or a federal program that we're matching you to, we would make application. We would get some concurrence from you. Those programs require some, like, not affidavits, but affirmations that you've asked me, Kim, to represent you with them, not in the form of an attorney. That's a completely different relationship, but to be an owner's representation and to be that buffer between the landowner and whichever entity that you're working with on a conservation easement. We really sit down and we go through a questionnaire, and based on what your goals and desires are for the property, and match you to the program that's going to meet to the best of its abilities, your expectations, and then we help you set the expectations. You might have a property that's perfect for 2 programs, but based on your personal preferences and your goals for the property, there might be one that's better suited for your goals and ideas of what you want to see the property done. And then we just work with you on that. So it's reach out to us, and we not so unlike Match.com, match you to the best funding source. And I'll have to come up with a better, non copyrighted analogy, but it really is. We're matchmaking, we're fostering, and working on this relationship.
Great, thank you. I'm trying to get into the chat here. Oh, there we are. To see.
Oh, I see some questions.
Yeah. So here's another question for you. What is the typical length of time that it takes to create a conservation easement?
So that's a relative question. So create as in draft, that could be a couple of weeks, but create as in draft, negotiate, cradle to closing on a conservation easement can be anywhere from 9 months, which is really fast, to 18 months, depending on the complexity of the funding source. And by complexity, I just mean simply the more funding partners we have, the slower it goes. States tend to run a little bit faster than feds, depending on the program. So really, so much of that is the typical lawyer answer. That depends on the complexity of the projects. But on average, if you were to fall right in the middle, about a year.
Okay. Next question. What are a few examples of funding sources and programs?
Sure. So funding sources and programs, you have the Florida Forever program, which is run by Florida Department of Environmental Protection Services, FDEP, and I'm trying to remember to use my words and not my acronyms. Um, the United States, USDA, United States Department of Agricultural's RCPP program, which is Rural Conservation Protection Program, and that is a federal program. You have another state program. You have an interesting thing. You have the FDACS, Florida Division of, well, I should have my own cheat sheet in front of me. Florida Department of Agriculture on the state level, and then you have FDEP, Environmental Protection. Those are both under the state, and they're both end up being titled, basically under, the governor, but they both have very different goals. So there's two completely separate programs at a state level. So Rural and Family Ranch Land focuses on food, fiber, and farming. DEP really focuses on protecting the environment as its foremost goal, as opposed to Rural and Family Ranch Lands protects the environment as a side benefit to advancing and fostering and supporting agriculture. So two different programs. I'm explaining that from a layman's standpoint, not a political standpoint, but that's the easy way to understand it. There are other programs like there are military programs. You have ACUB, which is Army Compatible Use Program. You have REPI, REPI, Readiness. I forget what that one is, but it goes throughout the state. And the point of those federal military programs is to facilitate conservation easements. So they're not military overreach, they're not mission creep. But in order for a military base to be able to fully operate and use all of its base, 100% of its base, it can't have setbacks like you see in a neighborhood, in a residential neighborhood. And so by setbacks, I mean you can't have a huge housing development build up against the side of a base and then be surprised that the base makes noise. And you hear bombing exercises and airplanes flying over. I mean, how many times have we heard, people move next to an airport and then they complain about the noise? So these military base buffer programs provide funding for conservation easements in and around their military installations and facilities. Then there are the local municipalities. There are the water management districts. Those are the quasi-governmental entities or the special districts throughout the state. There's 5 of them in this state. We primarily work around Suwannee, Northwest is a little northwest, but Suwannee and St. John's are where primarily we're working in their districts. And then we have our local municipalities. And if you know, we helped Nassau County with their referendum. And they created their own funding source chosen by their people. So that's creating another funding source that creates match. And by the way, match is very, very important because all of these state and federal programs really like match. So now that Nassau County and again, Clay County just got theirs approved last week, 2 weeks ago on election day, they just got theirs approved. So that's a whole nother county that's adding match to these other federal programs. And the more you can match, the further the money goes by leverage. So those are a lot of the funding sources and programs that are available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
Those were awesome questions. Thank you again, Kim. If you guys think of any questions afterwards, feel free to send an email. I'm sure Kim wouldn't mind fielding a few more if you think of them. We will go ahead and wrap up a little early today. Like I said, the session has been recorded, so if you've got friends that couldn't join us today, we'll make sure we get this one up on our YouTube channel, and you can share that with them for for the future. Our last session of the year is going to be our fearless leader, Allison DeFore, who I believe I saw on the call. Allison's going to present on December 11th. He'll tell us all about land trusts and how we work, how we operate. That one is going to be at 2 p.m. on December the 11th instead of 12. So make sure you make that change if you're planning on attending. And we are again so grateful to have you join us. Thank you to Rick and Faith Hoffman for sponsoring this series. And we look forward to bringing you a new series like this in the spring too. So little teaser there. Stay tuned for more to come. But thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy your day.